everyone, welcome to Shelf Space. I'm your host, Ron13, and today we are reviewing the HG Build Divers Impulse Gundam Arc from Build Divers. This is specifically from the first season, not the second season. Note the uppercase I in the logo there. Technically, I got this kit for some parts. You could say it's a Impulse Spy. Blame Shoki for that one. He told me to say it. But it was a pretty cool build, and I wanted to show it off to you guys. But first, let's take a look at the box. So, we got a nice dynamic pose of the Impulse Gundam Arc with its BFG sticking out like that, ready to blast somebody. It's kind of in that sort of classic Gundam Seed pose. And then behind him, you can see his two sort of flight modes. I can't remember if they got a specific name for them or something like that. Part of me wants to call them like top flyer, bottom flyer, but I think that's double Zeta or something. Anyway, we got the Build Divers logo, HG Build Divers, Impulse Gundam Arc, Emilia's mobile suit, Impulse Gundam Arc again, blue Bandai logo showing that this is in fact a reissue. Then on this side, we got some nice painted examples of the kit, showing off all the things that it can do, with little write-ups there. If you want to look at them and read them, you can. Then on this side, we got the same information as the front, plus the BandaiHobby.net. Then here, again, another painted example of the kit with a write-up. I'll slowly go over there. A little write-up about Build Divers. And then your usual warning info. And then, because this is an older kit, we do still have the yen price printed on there. So this went originally for 1,900 yen. So about 19, 20 bucks thereabouts. And I think I paid around that cost. Maybe a little less, actually. Then, same information as the other side. And that's the box. So, now that that's done, let's take a look at the figure itself. And here he is, looking pretty nifty. If very dark. I had to readjust my lights a lot in order to get this guy to show up, other than a dark splotch. He's got these dark blues on that just seem to absorb light like a black hole. Which is really weird, because he doesn't look like that in hand. But overall, I think it looks pretty neat. It is a remold, retool of the Impulse Gundam from Gundam Seed Destiny. And I'm thinking it's based off of a newer version of it. Because I think they had that initiative for the revise line or something like that, where they were making new versions of all the sort of protagonist suits. And I think Impulse was one of the ones that got made. So the engineering and part separation on this is actually pretty darn sharp. And overall, I'm pretty happy with it. You'll notice that I don't have all the stickers on this guy. That's because I'm actually going to use this guy mostly for parts. But I do have an idea that I may implement on him for a custom for basically what's left. But let's go ahead and take a look at articulation now. As usual, we are going to start with the head. And the molding on this is it's kind of funny to me, at least. He's got these big wings kind of in lieu of a traditional V-fin, which is neat. I like it when they play with the concept of a V-fin, but this is a little much, I think. In some ways, it reminds me of, they were called Gremlins from, I think it was some Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, and they all had like airplanes on their heads, and that's what it looks like. He looks like he has an airplane on his head, and it's kind of silly, but kind of neat at the same time. I'm torn on how I feel about it. He does have eye stickers on, It's just hard to see with the lighting. Articulation-wise, he's got a hinge for the neck at the bottom as opposed to the usual sort of ball joint thing. And then, that's right. He doesn't actually have like a ball joint at the top of the neck either, I think. It is... Oh, never mind. He does. Sorry. It kind of moves a little funny. So in the normal position, you have... It wants to more rock side to side than turn, but it can turn. And you do have the turkey neck thing going on. It's just the neck itself at the bottom doesn't have a ball joint. It has just a hinge. But what's cool is it does give a nice looking up, for flying poses. Probably could use a little bit more, but overall, that's pretty cool. And it's interesting to see it being done in a different fashion than other kits. So next up is his shoulders. Partly for transformation, he has the butterfly jointing set up so that way it can basically tilt up all the way like that. And there's a ball joint that goes into it there for your usual ball jointed range of movement. And you can even pull it out a little bit to further increase movement. Then you can rotate things here on a hinge. And was there a bicep swivel? Yes, there is a bicep swivel. And then elbow is double jointed for a really nice bend there. And wrist is on your standard ball socket joint. There are no swappable hands for it, at least if I remember correctly. In the torso, you have a little bit of ab crunch, a little bit of side to side, and a ball joint at the waist that does like to pop apart easily, but that's partly on purpose, actually. You can rotate side to side, but you are getting interference from all this stuff around the back. So like in here, you can see it bumps into the back. Though it's still pretty decent. It just means you can't, turn his waist all the way around. And if you really want to, you can lift this up and replace it. So on the backpack, this part can come up like that if you want. So for the legs, you can flip up the skirts, or at least the front skirt, get a high kick like that, and there is a double jointed knee, but the bend isn't super great, but still pretty decent. You have the ability to point the toe down, as well as the usual movement around. You can see the hinges in there. The toe joint is mostly for transformation, but it is a nice thing to have. And you can tilt it back a little bit. And you can't really make it go back much. The back skirt is stationary, so there is that. The side skirts can move up a little bit, but that's about all you can get for splits. So not a whole lot of good on the Jean-Claude Van Damme scale. So really, on the articulation scale, he's not too bad. It's not the best I've seen, but he is certainly not the worst. And if you want, you can get him in some pretty decent poses. Oh, that's right, and the legs do rotate there. I think I keep forgetting that joint. Sorry about that. Just trying to use a pose where you use a lot of his joints all at the same time. So you can still get him into some pretty dynamic poses. Getting him to stand up might be an issue. There we go. It's almost a fencing pose. So yeah, I dig the kit. I'm not absolutely enamored with it like some of the other kits I've looked at, But I certainly do not hate this thing and do not regret getting it, even if I am going to kind of strip this guy for a lot of his parts. There is more to this kit than meets the eye. We'll get into that part, though, after we look at accessories. So first up, he's got his big gun. I'm sure it has some sort of proper name. I don't know what it is. Also, I don't have all the stickers on it. There is a big camera sticker right here. It should be noted that, yes, there is a big seam going right down the middle of it. And there's not a lot you can do about that other than do some seam removal stuff. It's not particularly egregious, though you will potentially lose this little panel line here unless you do some scribing or something to restore it after you do any panel line removal. It does look pretty cool, though. It's a little bit different than some of the usual Gundam fare that I've seen. Though I suppose it's a little reminiscent of the Jian bazooka from Gundam 00, which is weird considering this is based off of Gundam Seed. He's got a little tank here that can go in, and you can retract this for his transformation form, which, like I said, we will get into that in just a little bit. But let's take a look at him with the gun in his hand. If I remember correctly, you can just slot it in. Can you? Yep. So the problem, it's a very heavy weapon. So holding it one-handed is not going to be a thing he can easily do. Unless you point it downward or something. So that is something to be aware of. I imagine if you maybe reinforced the ball joint on the wrist, you might be able to get it to work a little bit better. But yeah, as is, he can't hold it super nicely unless you get it into some specific poses. But even then, it's going to be tilting his wrist down. Maybe what they could have done is put some sort of connector here or built something into the shield connector here, which he doesn't use the shield connector, at least from what I was able to see. So they could have done something, but they didn't. Let's see if I get it pointing straight up. Yeah. You can do that. Cool looking weapon, but it's so big that it doesn't quite work. Another accessory is this thing, which is a special adapter for action bases, which allows you to connect it for his transformed mode, which I keep talking about that. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Got to warn you, I haven't done this yet, so this is going to be the first time I've seen it and attempted it, and you guys are going to witness me stumble through it. Okay, so to start off, we're going to pull him apart. But not that much, because this blue part needs to stay right here. So we'll set that aside for right now. And we're going to get him into a neutral position. Let's see, lift arms up, lift arms up. Going to rotate and rotate. And then we're going to bring these up. Oh, wait, no. I misinterpreted an instruction. Oh, no. I'm making myself look foolish online. You can't do that. Everybody will know. Okay. So we got that like that. So it's difficult to do because that V-fin airplane head thing is kind of in the way. Okay, I think I got this the best I can. And then, oh, is this really how it goes? Huh. Okay. And then you have these little pegs here that just go into... Oh, these actually do use the shield pegs. Okay. So bravo on them for remembering that these things exist. So there you go. There's the... I don't even know if it calls it anything. So that can zip around. And actually, I mean, doesn't look absolutely horrible. It very much looks like something that could only work in space, but it does feel somewhat cohesive. I like how the gun flows into the shape of the backpack there. Apparently there is another connector part that I neglected to cut out that goes into here, and then that plugs into a action base. Next up, the legs. So we're going to do this. We're going to point to the toes. We're going to kind of double bend the knee. It has that sort of very standard Gundam transformation knee joint where things kind of bend funny. These flip forward. And that's pretty much it. This one isn't quite as impressive. I mean, if you wanted, I suppose you could put these forward, but yeah, there you go. And then this connector basically goes into the usual connector in between the legs. Yeah, so this, not as impressive. It's a thing that you can do. I will say this, though. The transformation is achieved without any real parts forming other than separating the two units, which that's kind of what it's designed to do. I wonder, what does it look like if I do this? If it'll let me. Maybe that's a sign. So if you want to, you can leave them combined and you have this monstrosity. It's kind of neat, but yeah. Oh, you can... You know what? You can tilt it forward like that. And actually, I'll give it some credit. This does look somewhat cohesive like this. It is not mentioned in the instructions. The only other thing mentioned in the instructions is that you can combine it with the Lance version. You can see right there. And there's even... You can even combine it with just the weapon parts. So yeah, go ahead and start de-transforming this thing and give you my final thoughts. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's set him aside because there is something else you guys should be aware of with this kit. He does have a lot of unused parts. Remember how I said that he's made from the Impulse Gundam? Well, you have all the parts for the Impulse Gundam. And a lot of them don't get used. Some of these are actually parts for the Impulse Lance, in fact. But like here, you got the chest and shoulders from the Impulse. You got parts to make most of the shield. You got parts to make little flyer things that went with it. You have the original helmet. I think you used the face part of the helmet on the actual kit. You even have its gun. So if that is something that bothers you, this will bug the snot out of you. But if you're somebody that is looking for extra parts for customizing and stuff like that, this might seem like a smorgasbord for you. Again, it's kind of up to your own personal views on these things. But overall, I think I dig this kit. I don't know if I would have necessarily picked it up if I hadn't been planning on using parts of it for other things. Come on. Oh, goodness. That got stuck real good. There we go. But, like I said, I certainly do not regret picking this guy up, because it was a neat, slightly differently done build. And, you know, after you keep building the same thing over and over again, it does get a little bothersome, little dull, little boring. I mean, just ask Shoki over at Shoki Reviews when he finishes up every double October. He usually gets a little burnt out on Gundam kits and needs to refresh himself with other projects. Which, if you guys aren't already subscribed to his channel, please do so. He puts out some really good content, and he's a good friend of mine. So yeah, if you can get this at a good price, go for it. I do not see any reason not to get this unless you are adverse to basically excess amounts of plastic, or if you're really bummed about how the gun is too heavy for him to hold. So, yeah, that's been a review. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. Check the description below for links to my storefront where you can get official Shelf Space t-shirts and more. And yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you next time you invade my Shelf Space.